The case itself, that and this comes back to the difficulty. There was a non-cohort group, and so I had to find participants from amongst a variety of courses over a period of time. And because it was online study, and at that time it was very difficult to get research ethics for online studies because you needed the approval and consent of all the other people in the classes, and these people were scattered over classes. There were quite a few headaches in getting this, barriers in getting the study set up. I had 15 participants overall, and so I conceptualised this as an embedded case study. At each level I took more data and looked more in depth as I went down. And so 15 teachers, and if I just flip to the next slide, might be a little bit easier. For all of the 15 teachers, I looked at course documentation, so I looked very carefully at course outlines and assessment records and things like that for the courses. I looked at the online course sites themselves, so how the lecturers had set up the spaces where teachers interacted, what they looked like. I looked at the activity records that came out of the learning management system, so the data that said how many times people were logged in and how long they spent online and all that sort of thing for all 15 teachers. And I interviewed all 15 teachers. The next group down, I paid a lot more attention to their actual work or their postings in the online space. So I actually analysed what they had put up there in the forums and looked at that in a lot more detail and their assignments. And then the final group of 4 teachers, I also went out into the schools and interviewed 2 or 3 of their colleagues. So I was 11 interviews in all. One of the teachers I could only interview 2 colleagues, but for the other 3 I interviewed 3 each, to get a sense of what this teacher's work was like in their school space and what their colleagues saw of their study. So just to summarise that, it's my 15 teachers, the number of interviews. Most of them were 2 or 3 interviews. There were a few teachers I left in there, even though I only interviewed them once, because they still contributed something to the study. The online subgroup, also the online postings and assignments, and then that last group, their interviews. I'm just going to give you just a little bit of a picture of some bits of the data that actually came out of here. The arrows at the top were just to indicate that these were the subgroup, the embedded groups of 8. So not this first 7, but the other 8 teachers in comparison to the whole 15. So you can see there's a bit of a spread. They're pretty much over here. This is just simply the number of times they logged in a course for a semester. So yeah, there's a bit of a pattern. The people that logged in often for most courses. The people that didn't log in very often didn't log in often for most of the courses. Generally speaking, there's a bit of a pattern to number of logins over the time. When we look at the number of hours they spent online, so actually how long they spent logged into the sites, it starts to spread out a bit. You start to see a bit more variation. Even for this teacher here, a huge variation between courses. She spent a lot of time online, and one she spent not a great deal. And same here. For some of the ones at the lower end, they didn't spend very long in the online space anyway. Now, it doesn't tell us a great deal because they could be logged in and gone off and made a cup of coffee, or watching TV, or talking on the phone, or doing something else. It's not fantastic data, but it's sort of interesting that there's a bit of a pattern there. So take it with a grain of salt, is how I would say. I don't know if that's a saying you're familiar with. And this one is the number of posts people made into the forums or any of the interactive social spaces in the courses themselves. So again, quite a spread at this end, and some of it will depend on the course, because this course, for instance, ICT 1, which is the red squares and tends to be near the top for most people, was a course most people did fairly early on and required a great deal of interaction. Like the way the teacher had set it up, the lecturer, there was a much higher expectation for people to be in that space and talking to each other. Whereas for some of the others, they may have been more research-based, and so, again, it needs to be interpreted with caution. But it gives an idea that the teachers I'm looking at were spread right across the range of what we've got actually happening here. And that's just all of those ideas combined to give an idea of the hours and the red posts of people, and the fine yellow line is the number of logins. So a little bit of a pattern. The people that logged in most tend to spend more time online, tend to do posts, but nothing very statistically. It's too random to be statistically proven. So that was part of the data, if you were looking at how do these people engage in the online space, that's one way to look at it. But as I said, a very poor way to really understand the quality of what was going on. So the other thing I did was to look in detail at those 8 teachers about the sorts of online postings and what they were seeing. If I was a lecturer in those courses, what would I be seeing and what sort of opinion would I be forming of what those teachers were doing? And there was really strong evidence of social presence. Teachers going in there and talking to one another like they knew each other, you know, in the forums. Mutual engagement and discussions, not just a one-off post, but you know, Bob says something and Nancy talks back and I say something, and there's that interaction between people in the online space. Peer activities where they were doing something together, and I'll show you 1 or 2 examples of these in a moment. Collegiate support and problem solving. This one was really interesting. When things got tough, the teachers helped themselves out. Some of the best examples of collaboration and problem solving was when the lecturer wasn't so good. So when the lecturer, you know, sort of maybe wasn't there or took a step backwards, people were able to help each other out. Quite a sense of joint enterprise, like they were all in there to understand more about the pedagogical strategies for using ICT in the classroom. And it was evident in the way they talked and the way that came through. And lots of examples of shared repertoire, people using language that they knew other teachers would understand. We were teachers together in the space and we talked about whether it was a New Zealand particular Ministry of Education thing or a strategy that would make some sense or a curriculum document or something that they shared a common understanding of what it was to be a teacher in our context. So if I was the lecturer, I would look at this and I can see good examples of community happening in that online variant. A couple of examples. This one is, and I'll just read out it. You don't need to read all of the detail, but this is someone called Ali, who is one of my, in that group of 8. She said, welcome to somebody who's arrived late. A late start, but if you need help with anything, just feel free to ask questions. I'm sure one of us will be able to help you out. Good luck catching up. I'm sure you'll have it sorted in no time. It's quite friendly and warm and welcoming, you know, like it's, we're here together, it's hello. And another post by the same teacher in a different course, she's saying, and this was a little activity they were working on together, hey, it's a very colloquial hello, no, hey, no, that's cool, very, you know, laid-back language. That's the beauty of online learning, and especially doing things via wikis, as we can go in and out to do what we like when we like. I hope it's okay with you and S that I go and get the page started with what I found useful so far. I'll not get offended if someone deletes or changes things. Shall we use the discussion area right on wiki to chat? I'll keep checking both for now, forums, both forums for now. Cheers and have a good week. You know, again, you get the sense that these are people that know each other. It's almost the sort of language you would use if you were talking to your colleague or, you know, sitting around a table working together. Here's another one. Someone has, and I won't read all of this one, but this teacher has put some course objectives up into a shared space. She's started to create an online class to do something with her own students, and she's inviting feedback from other people in an online class, other teachers, to tell her if she's on track or not. So again, you think, you know, that's mutual, they're working together, there's a sense of they know each other, and there's good interaction here. And then this one was a discussion, and I've cut some bits out, was to give you an idea. There was a discussion happening around whether or not multimedia books, talking books with American accents were useful in New Zealand classrooms. You know, was it a problem that there were American accents in a New Zealand classroom? And here there's quite a, she's talking about the book, she's talking about the way she teaches reading in her classroom and how she goes about that, and she's on the lookout, you know, for good resources. So she's picking up on things other people have said, she's incorporating that into her response, and she's talking to them about it. So it's not just a monologue, she hasn't just written an essay and put it up there, she's actually having a conversation. So just before I put some of these up, as a lecturer looking at those sorts of examples, you get a sense that your students are all in there, that they're interacting, that they know each other, that they're, you know, taking notice of what each other is saying, and you feel like that socio-cultural learning is actually happening in your classroom. What was interesting when I asked teachers about the perceptions of the online classroom is that they felt very peripheral. So it was almost a contrast to what you would interpret when you looked at the sorts of things I've just shown you. They felt like they didn't really belong to the classroom. they were very purposeful. They went into study, they had a set time in the evening, or they allowed an hour after school finished to work at school before they went home, or they had some time at the weekends where their families went off and did something else and it was some study time. So they were very structured in finding times to work. They fitted it in around very busy lives as teachers. A lot of them were mothers. A lot of these people were women in their 30s and 40s, so they had family commitments as well. And so they were very pragmatic about their online study. They knew what they wanted out of it, they knew why they were doing it, and they just went in and did it. For them it was fleeting. I met so-and-so in such and such a course early on, and oh yes, I did recognise their name later on, but there was no sense of continuity for them, apart from just an acquaintance. You know, I remember your name. Oh, hi, we did that other course together. But that was about it. Like, they didn't email each other offline or have any other sort of sense of connection to one another. And they definitely weren't social. They said things like, I'm not there for the social chit-chat, or I haven't got time for the cafe forum where you talk about where's the best restaurant in Hong Kong. You know, that wasn't what they were there for. However, they did say they valued the new ideas and the strategies and the theoretical understanding that they got from the course itself. They valued different perspectives. What was really interesting is the primary teachers and the secondary teachers tended to be two camps. They were in the same course, but the primary teachers would gravitate, as we probably all do, to people who had a similar background. So in a forum, they would tend to answer the responses of other primary teachers, and they would say things to me like, oh, I couldn't relate to those secondary teachers. They're over there and they talk a different language. Or the secondary teachers would say, oh, it's all right for us primary teachers because they've got the kids all day and they can do things differently. So there was a little bit of, in terms of who they responded to, sifting them about. However, they also said that the people from a different experience were often the ones that really were the catalysts for them to think about things more deeply. Particularly secondary teachers looked at what primary teachers could do, and they said, wow, they can do that in a primary class. I ought to be able to do that in my secondary classroom. If they can do that with little kids, I ought to be able to do it with my secondary students. And was particularly true around things like higher learning and social constructive sort of learning approaches. Secondary teachers were really challenged by what they saw in the primary class. So even though the study was a little bit more advanced, they all talked quite real to them in terms of where they were thinking. It's just a brief example of the sorts of things they said they were doing in their classrooms. And a lot of them showed me the examples. I interviewed them in their classrooms. They talked about some of these things, pointed to the things on the wall. They talked about using web tools for creative, collaborative, student-led activities. So they were experimenting with new things. Designing and implementing web quests was one. It was quite hot at the time I did that. We probably maybe not using them as much now, but at the time it was something that was really popular. Concept mapping and higher order thinking strategies were ones they were talking about. Inquiry learning, so using technology to support inquiry learning processes, and blended learning approaches. So they were some of the classroom-based type things they were doing. We also had a number of teachers who were increasingly taking on ICT lead roles in their school, so they were starting to support and help other teachers in the school. And they were doing things like perhaps introducing a learning management system, whether it was Moodle or interactive one we were using at the time. Running professional development sessions for colleagues, so they might have been taking little sessions at school to share some of the things that they had been learning with their colleagues, and often quite informally sharing readings and resources with other people in the school. So they were studying online, they were getting a qualification, but there was a bit of a flow on to their colleagues around them. And I think one of the ones that showed the strongest connection to practice were where teachers were involved in we had one paper, it was a full-year research paper, and in that paper teachers chose their own research project and based it usually in their classroom, it could be in their school or somewhere else, and that was the one that they really did get the most from, and they talked about what they did and how that flowed through to their classrooms. Just some examples there.